The war ended with a piece of paper and a wedding dress. Elira Voss stood in a hall she did not know, wearing a gown she had not chosen, listening to men speak about peace, as if peace were something you could sign into existence with enough clean handwriting. Her father had died believing in this war. Now she was supposed to end it by walking down an aisle toward the man whose side had won. His name was Draven Ashwood. He was the Alpha King, and he stood at the end of the hall with his hands folded behind his back, watching her the way a man watches weather rolling in from a direction he does not trust. He did not smile. She did not either. Around them, hundreds of people from two sides that had hated each other for years sat very still, waiting to see if this marriage would hold or break apart before the first dance. Elira reached him. Up close, he was taller than she expected, and quieter. His eyes were the kind of calm that came from years of controlling a room simply by standing in it. "You do not have to pretend to be happy," he said, low enough that only she could hear. "Good," she said. "I was not planning to." Something moved behind his eyes. It might have been surprise. It might have been the beginning of respect. He did not explain it, and she did not ask. The ceremony finished quickly, the way things finish when nobody wants to linger in them. That night, in the private chamber prepared for them, Draven did not come near her. He stood by the window with his arms crossed, looking out at the borderlands that used to be a battlefield. "I will not touch you unless you ask me to," he said. "This marriage ends a war. It does not have to be anything else." Elira sat on the edge of the bed and studied a small chip in the stone floor, an old crack that had probably been there since before either of their fathers were born. It was easier to look at than him. "Fantastic," she said quietly. It was the word she used when nothing was fantastic at all. He did not respond to that, but she noticed he did not look away from the window until he heard her lie down. The next morning, she learned that surviving in his home would take more than surviving her wedding night. His pack, the tight circle of people who had fought beside him since he was young, did not trust her. To them, she was not a bride. She was the daughter of the enemy, wearing their queen's title like a stolen coat. The unkindness started small, a door left to swing shut in her face, a seat at dinner that somehow was never saved for her. Someone would say "war bride" just loud enough for her to hear, then look away before she could answer. Draven was rarely present for these moments, and when he was, he said nothing in front of others. But those responsible for the cruelty found themselves reassigned to distant duties within days, quietly and without explanation. Elira noticed the pattern before anyone admitted it to her. The worst of it came from a man named Cassian, Draven's closest advisor, who had known him since childhood, and clearly believed he understood the king's interests better than the king's new wife ever could. He found her one afternoon near the kennels, where she often went because the old dogs there did not care whose daughter she was. "Your father took good men from us," Cassian said, arms folded, blocking her path without quite admitting that was what he was doing. Good men who never came home. Elira did not step back. She had spent a long time learning not to. "My father buried more men than yours ever will," she said, her voice flat and even. "He watched every single one of them die trying to protect people exactly like you. So before you tell me what my family took from yours, ask yourself what you actually know about what it cost him to fight this war in the first place." Cassian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. She walked past him, and it was only once she was around the corner, out of sight, that her hands finally stopped shaking. Anger was easier than grief. Anger, at least, she knew how to use. She did not tell Draven about the encounter. She told herself it was because it did not matter. The truth was closer to the fact that she did not yet know what telling him would cost her, or whether he would even care. But Draven had a way of noticing things without being told. He noticed that she still fed the oldest, weakest dog in the kennel first every morning, the one none of his men bothered with anymore. He noticed that she had stopped flinching when raised voices passed her in the hallway, and instead simply turned to face them directly. He noticed that his own guards, who trained twice her size and twice her strength, came away from sparring sessions with her looking strangely humbled. He began finding reasons to be near the places she already was. He told himself it was because a king should understand the people living under his roof. He did not examine the idea any further than that, because examining it meant admitting something he was not ready to admit. One evening, Weeks into the marriage, he found her sitting alone by the old training yard, watching the sun go down over land that used to be marked with fences and blood. "You do not eat with the others," he said, sitting down near her without asking permission, the way he seemed to do with most things. "They do not want me there," she said. "It is easier for everyone if I am not." "It is not easier for me," he said. She turned to look at him properly, for the first time since the wedding. He was not looking at her the way the others did, with suspicion or with duty. He was looking at her the way a person looks at something they had decided, without meaning to, was worth protecting. "Why did you really marry me?" she asked. "The truth, not the treaty version." He was quiet for a long moment. "Because it ended the fighting," he said. "That is what I told myself. And it was true. But it is not the only reason anymore, and I think you already know that." She did not answer him. She looked back at the sunset instead, and neither of them moved to fill the silence with anything false. Cassian, however, had not stopped watching, and what he saw troubled him deeply. He believed with complete sincerity that Draven's growing closeness to Elira was a danger to everything the pack had built. He gathered a small group of allies within the council, men who shared his unease, and together they began to plan a way to remove her from the king's life entirely, quietly enough that no war would restart because of it. Draven learned of the plan only an hour before it was meant to happen, through a young guard who could not stay silent about it any longer. He did not call a council meeting. He walked directly into the hall where Cassian and the others were gathered, and he spoke in a voice so quiet that everyone in the room had to lean forward to hear it, which made it more frightening than if he had shouted. "Whoever moves against my wife," he said, "moves against me. I will not say this twice, and I will not forgive it if I have to say it a third time." The room went completely still. Some of the men lowered their eyes. Cassian did not. "You are choosing her over the family that raised you," Cassian said. "I am choosing what is right over what is comfortable," Draven answered. "You taught me that difference yourself, a long time ago. I would think you of all people would recognize it now." The confrontation did not end in bloodshed. It ended in a long, uneasy silence, and in several members of the council quietly leaving the room, unwilling to test how far the king's patience would stretch. Cassian remained, arms folded, clearly unconvinced but unwilling to challenge his king any further that night. Elira, who had not been told any of this was happening, found out only when Draven came to find her afterward, his shoulders carrying a tension she had not seen in him before. She did not ask what had happened. She could see it in his face. "You did not have to do that," she said. "Yes," he said, "I did." For the first time since the wedding, she reached out first. She did not say anything grand. She simply took his hand, the way you might steady someone who had been standing too long without realizing how tired they were. He let her. In the weeks that followed, the tension in the pack did not disappear entirely. Old loyalties do not dissolve overnight, and Cassian's doubts did not vanish simply because his king had spoken firmly once. But something had shifted permanently. The small cruelties stopped. The whispered comments stopped. Slowly, without announcement, people began to treat Elira the way they treated anyone who had earned a place among them, because that was, in fact, what she had done. Cassian himself came to her one afternoon, unannounced, standing at the entrance to the kennels where she still fed the old dog every morning. "I misjudged you," he said. It clearly cost him something to say it. "I saw only where you came from. I did not see what you actually did once you arrived." "You do not have to apologize," she said. "I know," he said. "I am doing it anyway." She nodded, and that was enough. Neither of them needed the moment to be bigger than it was. That evening, Draven found her again by the training yard, the same spot where the sun always seemed to set the same way, gold and quiet over land that no longer needed to be defended by either of them. He sat beside her without asking, the way he always did now, and she let him. "I did not marry you to end a war," he said finally. "That is what I believed at the time, but I understand now that I married you, and then I fought my entire pack to keep you, because somewhere between the wedding and now, you stopped being a treaty and started being someone I could not imagine losing." Elira reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, chipped piece of stone, worn smooth from years of feet walking over it in the hall where they had married. She had taken it the night of the wedding, without knowing why, and kept it ever since. I do not know why I took this, she said, turning it over in her palm. I think I wanted proof that something from that night was real, even if nothing else was. Draven looked at the stone, then at her, and did not ask her to explain further. Some things did not need explaining. They simply needed to be understood. The war stayed ended. The pack, slowly and imperfectly, became whole again, not because every wound had healed, but because the people in it had chosen, one by one, to stop fighting the wrong battles. Elira never became someone who needed rescuing, and Draven never became someone who forgot what he had risked to keep her. They sat together as the sun went down, not speaking, not needing to. Two people who had started as strangers bound by a treaty and had somehow, without planning it, become something neither of them had words for yet. It was enough, for now, that neither of them was counting the exits anymore.